That is my guest co-host this week, James Lynch. We are here in Calgary. UFC on Fox 30 takes place this afternoon. We are heading over pretty much right after we're finished the show in about half an hour time, and we are going to go cover that. He's for Flow Combat and Fightful. I'm for Severe MMA. And we're just going to – this won't be a regular show. It'll be a lot quicker, a lot shorter than usual, but we'll just preview the card. First off, James, how are you?
I'm doing well. Apparently something's going off back there, but I'm doing quite well. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be a great card tonight. I'm looking forward to it.
I heard our voices back there from my laptop a second ago, but now I don't hear them. So I think we'll run the show and see what happens. As I said, UFC Calgary, Scotiabank Saddle Dome in just a couple hours. Great card. UFC 149 was the last time the UFC was here. 6 years ago, it was a good show. I wasn't really much of an MMA fan back then, so I can't really speak from first-hand experience. But from what everybody says, the facts are there were so many short notice replacements. Every fight on the main card except for one went to a decision. They were all boring. Nothing good happened on that show. 6 years later, 6 years was a lot of time to wait. But Dana White has said every year since that show, yes, we're going to pay Calgary back. We're going to pay Calgary back. Why did it take this long? And do you think this card makes up for everything that happened in 2012?
To your first point, why it took so long, I think part of it is the commission. I know it's not, you don't see a lot of MMA events run specifically in Calgary. Edmonton's running a lot of shows, but Calgary, I don't know what's going on with the commission. So I don't know if it was that. And also I think, just the stars aligning as far as, building a good card. Like you said, they had a really bad card a couple of years ago, 6 years ago, and they wanted to come back with a good card. So, it's really tough to have a good card this time of year when you have International Fight Week a few weeks before and you're really trying to stack the deck there. It just so happened that things ended up working out this year because we had a good card at UFC 226, and this is also an amazing card. And to answer your second question, this was worth the wait. I talked to a lot of people, just locals and everything else, and people are really pumped for this card. And one of the things, Nick, and again, I almost don't want to say it because we haven't actually had the fighters step into the cage, but nobody missed weight, and there's no injuries, no pullouts. I mean, when was the last time that happened on a UFC card?
Well, I think going to the stats guy, Mike Bond of MMA Junkie, said yesterday on Twitter that 3 cards in a row: Hamburg, Boise. Well, I guess those were reversed, but Boise, Hamburg, and this card, no fighters missed weight. That was the first time we had 3 in a row since 2016. That just shows how crazy weight cutting is and how crazy the sport is. But let's talk about UFC Calgary. Main event: Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, number 2. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you looking forward to this rematch?
Oh, definitely a 9. I think the first fight left us sort of hanging. A lot of people, including myself, thought that we would see the rematch right after that no contest. That doesn't end up happening. Eddie Alvarez fights Justin Gaethje, and then of course Poirier ends up fighting Gaethje and Anthony Pettis. Well, Pettis then Gaethje. I'm excited. I really don't know what's going to happen in this fight. I mean, if you're gonna put a gun to my head and I have to bet money, I'm definitely going to go with Poirier in this one, just because I think to me he's the younger guy. He looked pretty good leading up to that finish in the no contest, and he's really he finished Anthony Pettis, which was very impressive. Alvarez went decision with him. I know they both finished Gaethje. Alvarez finished him a little bit earlier. Dustin finished him a little bit later, but nonetheless, I really don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, Poirier has the youth experience, but Alvarez, he was a champion in Bellator. He's been used to the 5 rounds. I know Poirier's fought in a few main events here and there, but you have to look at the experience factor with Alvarez. The interesting thing too, Alvarez is a free agent after this fight, so what's weighing on his mind heading into this one? Who knows? But it's going to be a great matchup, and I like this fight just with the fact that I am picking Poirier, but it would not shock me at all if Alvarez was able to knock him out or pull this one out.
For me, now, I've wanted to see this rematch ever since Bruce Buffer announced the first fight as a no contest. May 2017, over a year ago, UFC 211 in Dallas, Texas. That was such a great fight on paper, and it was starting out to be maybe even a fight of the year candidate. Now, anything could have happened in the second and third rounds, but from what we saw before the illegal knees from Alvarez in that first round was what we expected. I mean, when you put Poirier and Alvarez in a cage, we didn't need the first fight to be able to say that, yeah, this is probably going to be a fun fight. And so at this point, I've wanted to see it for so long, so it's kind of it's hard to be disappointed that it's here, so let's just sort of accept it and watch it and take it for what it's worth. But could it have happened Sooner.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, there's some superior fighter. I think I don't know how far removed Poirier was from the Michael Johnson loss, but it's one of those things where Alvarez had fought really tough guys. But now, Poirier, if you watch that fight back, Poirier, you could argue was winning that fight. The other thing is Alvarez was coming off the loss to McGregor. Mentally, how is that weighing on you? I mean, certain fighters they never recover from a loss like that. So Alvarez has had a fight under his belt. Like I said, it's going to be a different fight this time around, and that's what makes this so exciting. I agree with you, though. I mean, some momentum could be lost, but I'm not complaining. These guys are still healthy. They're bang, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, in a way, the momentum has just gotten more, like it's increased because, and I think, I mean, although I say, I mean, could this have happened at the end of last year or even September once to get, Poirier, Alvarez are both healthy again from their first fight? Should it have happened earlier? Probably, but I think there's definitely some upside to waiting this long because since then Poirier has picked up basically his two biggest wins, knockouts of Justin Gaethje and Anthony. Those are two legit wins over top 10 guys right now at 155, and we all know how stacked the division is. Meanwhile, Alvarez hasn't been quite as active, but he also has an upset knockout win over Justin Gaethje. Now, keep in mind that Gaethje fight was, Gaethje was coming off the Johnson win back in July of last year. He was, I was saying this guy might be one of the best lightweights in the world. He's damn close, anyways. And for Alvarez to go in there and knock him out, a lot of people, if you recall, were thinking Justin was just gonna destroy Eddie Alvarez, and that clearly wasn't the case. So Alvarez has picked up some momentum. Poirier has picked up a ton of momentum. So in hindsight, waiting this long has just made this a bigger card. At one point that I find really interesting to sort of go off what we were saying. I have both Poirier and Alvarez about this. When they fought the first time, they were on the prelims. Now, granted, it was a pay-per-view. It was a stacked card. That was a Stipe JDS card, the rematch. But nonetheless, way bigger stage here. This is on Big Fox. They're the main event. It's 5 rounds, and the stakes are so higher. So I can't complain too much that we had to wait, a little over a year.
No, and it's like you said, this card's great. It's just sort of the icing on the cake if you look at some of the other fights in this card. But yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's a perfect fight for Calgary, where they're getting a really solid card that's not even a pay-per-view. I mean, we were talking about this with a few people. I think this card's better than next week's card, and I know they had some injuries, but even so, this is going to be a fantastic fight card tonight.
Before we give our pick for the main event, I'm curious. We're of course in Canada, so sort of an interesting point as we're both Canadians. Now, there aren't many Canadian fighters in the UFC right now, just as a number, but there's even less that could potentially headline cards. I mean, right now there's really nobody with Rory McDonald gone. Do you think the way they've set this card up is sort of the best way they can? We have Olivier Aubin-Mercier, a Canadian. He's opening up the Big Fox main card against Alex Hernandez. That's a terrific fight. You also have your fair share of Canadians on the prelims, Jordan Mean, Randa Marcos, just to name a couple. Do you think the way they've done it with dividing up, how many Canadians are on the card and you can't really headline with the Canadian, but is this ideal?
The short answer, yes. I prefer this way of building a fight card. I remember in the past, they would always try and put as many Canadians as they can on the card, and I think that's a bad idea because at the end of the day, we're all fight fans. It doesn't matter where they're from. We want to see good matchups, and if it means having to slide on some Canadians that we're not as high on, I'm fine with replacing that with a former champion taking on another guy or whatever. Like to me, it's about the quality of fight cards. Canadian fight fans are passionate. They're some of the biggest buyers of UFC content and everything else, and give them a good card. I think that's been the big complaint the last couple of years is that the cards have been a little bit weaker. A lot of them have been pay-per-views, granted, so you do have that higher standard. But I mean, this is a great card. This might be the best Canadian card we've had in years. I can't think of one that matches up against this one. So it's good to see the UFC prioritize the fights and not necessarily the homegrown talent.
The Lawler RDA card back in December of last year in Winnipeg was real close. But if you do look at the top 3 fights, I mean, does Ponzinibbio Perry compared to Joanna Jacek's return? Probably not. So yeah, this card is definitely great, and I'm looking forward to it. Poirier or Alvarez? Poirier is slightly favored, but it's such a close fight on paper. Who's the pick?
Well, you saw me earlier. I said Poirier. I'm going to stick with Poirier. I think to me, it's just the youth and the less wear and tear, and the fact that this guy is the big knock on Poirier when he was fighting at 45 and even a little bit at 55 is his chin, but he seems to have fixed that. I think he's been a little bit more patient with the strikes. It's a 5-round matchup. I think if the fight does go on longer, that would favor Alvarez, but I got to pick Poirier, but like I said, it would not surprise me if Alvarez gets the win here. He's a savvy veteran. He's picked up some wins that people didn't think were going to happen, including when he won the title over Rafael dos Anjos. So pick is Poirier, but close fight.
And you mentioned that 5 rounds probably favors Alvarez. Now, I don't think that's a point anybody can disagree with. Alvarez was the UFC champion. He was the Bellator champion. He's been in more 5-rounders, but Poirier is coming off a 4.5-round fight where he took a lot of damage himself against Gaethje. So I have confidence that if they need to, both fighters can go 5 rounds with ease. And so I guess it is tough to say, but Alvarez has had more experience on paper going 5 rounds. My pick as well as Poirier. I just think he's slightly cleaner of a striker, and what this really comes down to for me is who takes or who can take more damage. Alvarez has been hit a bit more than Poirier. He's been knocked out a few more times than Poirier. He's just been in the game a bit longer. He's taken the damage, and eventually you got to wonder, with a guy like Eddie Alvarez, who is known for his barn burners, when does that chin finally go? Sure, he's been knocked out, but when does that start happening over and over and over? We haven't seen it, so maybe now is not the time, but I have to have a little more confidence in Poirier's chin here, and in a fight where we know they're going to go in there and throw down as much as they can, I think that has to favor the guy with the better chin, and obviously it's going to be a stand-up war for the most part. I think Poirier's striking is just a little better than Alvarez's, so I think the pick has to be Poirier here. But as you said, James, I mean, if Alvarez pulls it off, he was the former champion. He's still one of the best in the world. Maybe not as good as Khabib and Conor and even Ferguson, but real close. So I'm looking forward to the fight, but I am going with the diamond here. I'll go with TKO in round number 3.
Interesting. I don't know if I'd say Alvarez is a worse chin than Poirier. I mean, I think they're both kind of on par together, sure. But I think I'll say late finish maybe by Poirier as well. We'll see. It's tough to say. It would not surprise me if this goes the distance. It would not surprise me if this goes the distance as well, and maybe Poirier edges him out on the scorecards too. We'll see what happens.
This goes the distance. I feel. I mean, although I said they're cardio, I feel like just the amount of volume they have, I think they'll be gasping for air by the end of the 5th. But nonetheless, let's move on to the co-main event. Former UFC featherweight champion, definitely fallen down a little bit, but has he fallen down enough to beat or to lose to Jeremy Stephens?
Yeah, I like Aldo in this fight, to answer your question. To me, I think the odds are a little bit crazy here. To me, Aldo should be a clear favorite. If you look at, it's really easy to look at a guy's winning streak and not look at the context of it. I think Stephens has really turned things around. I give him credit for that, and certainly the UFC has too, with giving him this co-main event slot on a big card like this. But you just look at the wins. Gilbert Melendez, the guy who really been the same. Doo Ho Choi, who I think has been disappointing in a few fights, and then the win over Emmett. It was impressive. But that was a controversial win. There was some, illegal stuff went on there as far as some of the shots. So to me, it wasn't a clear-cut thing that says that this guy is really at the top of the division. And Aldo, yes, it's easy to look at the 2 losses and say he's done. He hasn't been the same. I see so many people saying he hasn't been the same since Conor. You guys forget that he fought Frankie Edgar at UFC 200 and won a decision pretty decisively. I mean, Edgar is still at the top of the heap as well, too. I think if you look at the guys that Aldo's fought, the level of competition, his only losses right now are to Holloway twice and McGregor. I mean, that's tough to go against. He still has that win over Chad Mendes. He still has the win over Edgar. I mean, this is a guy that is at the top of his game. Now, certainly, you could argue that he has potentially lost a step, but I think against a guy like Stephens, where he has more experience, he has, if he decides to use the leg kicks to his advantage, I think there's a lot of advantages in this fight for Jose Aldo, and I think he will get the win here. Now, is it a finish? Is it a decision? We'll see. Stephens hasn't been finished in a while. On the same note, Stephens hasn't fought a lot of guys that can put you away. So to me, I think I like Aldo in this fight. I'm going against grain here. I know some people feel like he's past his prime, but I think even a past his prime, Aldo still beats Jeremy Stephens. I think he gets the win here.
You mentioned that Stephens hasn't fought too many guys that can put him away. Well, can Aldo? I mean, Aldo hasn't scored many finishes,
right,
in the past even 5 years. So.
But you look at the guys he's fought. Holloway, McGregor couldn't even finish him. Edgar's was finished by Ortega, but before that, I mean, you have to go. I don't think he had ever been finished before that. And then you look at Mendes. Mendes was. I know he suffered maybe a loss or 2 in between there, and McGregor one in particular. But I mean, he still had a win over him. So to me, if you look at the level of competition, it's not even close. I mean, Aldo has fought way tougher guys than Stephens has, and
which makes sense because he was the champ. So
exactly, yeah.
He's fighting #1 competitors until he loses.
Yeah, and to me, I think this. We'll see. Could Stephens pull this off? Absolutely, but I mean, if I'm looking at this on paper, I have to take Aldo. You'd be crazy not to, just with the experience and the championship level. And this was a guy that, you know, Aaron Brunstetter, our good friend from TSM, brought up. If Aldo gets this win here, I mean, he has to be considered one of the greatest of all time in terms of his resume.
I don't think this win or this fight determines streak, whatever it was. I mean, sure, whatever happens at the end of his career is not the way you want to go out, and it puts a bad taste, bad memories in the heads of MMA fans, because we all remember what just happened, not what happened 5 years ago. But a fight against Jeremy Stephens, of all people, shouldn't determine your status as one of the greatest. I mean, do you disagree, or?
It's tough to say, because I'm sure, yes, he'll still go down as one of the greatest ever. But I just think that, like, getting this win here on a big stage like this, on this big card, would certainly make that argument a lot easier. You know, Aldo, what he's done, no one can take that away from him. But you know, you got to still look good on the tail end of your career too. I mean, look at Anderson Silva right now. It's kind of a weird thing. He'll go in the Hall of Fame and all that, but I mean, his tail end of his career is not looking so hot right now.
Sure. I am going with Jose Aldo here as well. I know maybe it might have sounded like Jeremy Stephens. I was picking him here, but got to go Aldo. The thing with this matchup is, again, as I said off the top, it really comes down to is this the same Aldo? If he's fallen down a cliff and a half, then maybe Jeremy Stephens does knock him out. But losing to Max Holloway 2 in a row, it's hard to take away much from that. Everybody loses to Max Holloway, so. What does that mean? We don't really know. Now, the fact is he did get knocked out twice. He got, brutalized in that second fight. Probably could have been stopped earlier if I recall. Doesn't really matter. Nonetheless, I mean, he took a lot of damage in 2017. So how does he recover from all that? It's tough to say. Jeremy Stephens isn't a safe fight for him, because Jeremy Stephens can put guys away. Jose Aldo's chin probably isn't what it used to be. So if Stephens lands a couple good shots, it really could be all over. And we could be looking at a Jeremy Stephens title fight one day in 2018. But Jose Aldo, I have to put, his knockout losses to the side. I got to remember, he's fighting the best. Jeremy Stephens is good. He's gotten better, and he's probably the best he's ever been, which is crazy considering how many fights he's had and even how many losses. I think he has the most UFC losses out of any fighter in history, which is crazy to see. I mean, considering he's like top 5 at 145 right now. But I got to put that to the side and say Stephens is not on the level of Max Holloway or Conor McGregor. Aldo's going to get this done. I do believe so. And I was surprised when the line flipped. He's actually a slight underdog right now at -105. So if you're a betting guy and you think Aldo gets it done, I think there's a lot of value there. So I'm going Aldo by decision. I don't think he knocks out Stephens, because Stephens' chin is really good. He doesn't get finished much at all. And Aldo, he's not much of a finisher anymore. So I think that makes sense to me. This seems like a pretty good matchup to go 3 rounds. I'm really confident. If Aldo wins by knockout, I'd actually be quite surprised. If he wins, well, that's what I'm going for, so not so much. Let's talk about Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And I guess before that, there's one thing I want to ask you about. Now, Jose Aldo and Joanna, both former dominant champions, both coming off back-to-back losses to current champions in their respective divisions. First 3-round fight for Aldo in 9 years. First for Joanna in about 3.5 or so.
2014, yeah. It was last time she fought,
December.
Ended 2014, yeah.
How does that affect their performances, if it does?
I think it makes it easier. I mean, you train for 5 rounds, so you're going to have to focus more on the cardio aspect of things. But if you have a 3-round fight, you've got someone in Joanna who's, has really good striking, can put people away, like we saw that in the fight with Carla Esparza. I think it favors her, if anything. And I think if you're Tisha Torres, like, you really have to go guns a-blazing, because you've only got 3 rounds to do it. You don't have those extra 2 rounds. So to me, I think it's an advantage for both fighters, actually.
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure if it'll be an advantage for Aldo. It certainly will be, because he does tire out in those latter rounds a little bit. I think that sort of idea is, thrown out there a little more than it should be. He ultimately has decent cardio. But yes, in the 5th round, you can tell that he's gone 25 or 20 minutes already. Joanna, I mean, her cardio is very good. In the 5th round, she can be as fresh as she was in the first, more or less. And so it's tough to say how that'll impact her performance against Tisha Torres. We'll talk about that now. What are you expecting from Joanna Jędrzejczyk? She is a very confident person. So I guess to my point a second ago, I'm interested to see just not having a title fight, not being a part of a title fight, how that'll impact her confidence and just her mentality. I mean, the idea in the Rose Namajunas first fight, well, I'm the dominant champion, I'm going to win as always. Of course, Joanna champion and still. Now the rematch, well, I got clipped, but I'm in a title fight again. I'm fighting her. I'll avenge the loss. All will be good. Now she's not getting that opportunity to fight for the title, which she hasn't had in so long. How will that affect her?
Well, I think that I think she has to know that she still is at the top of the division. I mean, she lost the decision. We should point that out in the last fight, and it was a close matchup. I mean, Rose won, in my opinion, but I think it's one of those fights where Joanna still proved that she's at the top of the heap, and Tecia Torres just isn't there. I mean, if you look at, she has had some nice wins. She beats women that are sort of on the lower end of the division. Gatekeeper kind of hovering around there, but she can't win when it counts. Jessica Andrade she lost to. That's who she's coming off a loss to. She's had other fights where she's just come up short, including Rose. So, you look at that, whereas you look at Joanna, who, has pretty much dismantled everyone not named Rose Namajunas. I still think she's at the top of the division. I think she beats anyone that's not Rose Namajunas, and I'm going to stick with that here. I think she gets the win. Does she finish Tecia? It's tough to say. A lot of people have had trouble finishing Tecia. I'm trying to even remember in the UFC. I don't think she's lost by stoppage. Randa Marcos, I think, defeated her by, it was a decision or something. She beat her on the show. Granted, they fought again, probably a different story. But in my opinion, I think that Joanna probably gets a decision here. Just over 3 rounds, just battering Tecia. Because here's the thing. I mean, I don't think Ticia's going to be able to get the takedown, and I think it stays standing as much as Tecia has improved her stand-up. Joanna's just on another level with her striking, and I think she gets the job done here.
Yeah, this isn't a difficult fight for me to call really at all. Joanna is less than a 3-1 underdog. I think she could be easily 3.5 to 4-1. I mean, I just don't know where Tecia wins. I mean, obviously her game plan is going to be close the distance, get on top of Joanna, beat her up a little bit, but it's not like her ground and pound's all that great. I mean, she kind of just gets on top and looks for the chokes, which is great, but I just can't see that happening. I mean, Joanna Jędrzejczyk is the way longer fighter. She's very good at keeping distance, and so I have no if she can do so against people like Jessica Andrade for 25 minutes, she has to be able to do so against Tecia Torres for 15. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, as we said, I mean, 15 minutes does benefit Joanna because it's just less time for Tecia to pull off some miraculous come from behind victory. That I'm speaking off of my prediction of Joanna as sort of not coasting, but having a one-sided win tonight. But I think that's what happened. So, we're here to call fights, and I'll call it as I see it. I don't see how Tecia wins here. And so give me Joanna Jędrzejczyk by decision. I don't think she finishes her. I don't think she'll bloody her up too much, but I think she'll just piece her up on the feet and not really let Torres do much damage, have much offense, and I think it'll be a clean sweep, 30-27 for the former champion. Last fight we will talk about is a very interesting one at 155. Now, completely different from the last 3 fights. Neither of these guys are top contenders right now in 155, but I think both could be down the road. We got Alex Hernandez taking on Olivier Aubin-Mercier, the Canadian gangster himself. What do you think of this matchup? You have basically prospect versus prospect. Is this a smart fight for the UFC?
Yeah, it is, because you have to really see if Alex Hernandez is the real deal. It's tough to say because, he had that huge win over Beneil Dariush, who was a big underdog. It was a short notice fight. He has knockout power. But the thing is, we've seen Dariush suffer knockout losses in the past. So to me, it's like there was a path to victory for Hernandez here. Is he lightning in a bottle, or is this kid the real deal? 25 years old, very charismatic, has a pretty good record. But if you look at some of the guys he's fought, I mean, experience-wise, Olivier's, definitely got him beat there. So we're going to find out. I think this is a good test. And, Olivier, he has, I think he only has the 1 loss in the UFC, but really, I mean, this is, if he can beat an Alex Hernandez and show that, he's able, 2 losses, you're right, I forgot about the finale. But no, if Olivier, if he's able to go out there and, get a dominant win here like he did in his last fight against Evan Dunham, then obviously he's not just a prospect at this point. He's a guy we need to be talking about moving up the ranks. So if you're looking at this fight, though, I mean, Hernandez, his ways to win in most cases is by knockout. That he has the knockout power for sure. Olivier's never been knocked out in the UFC, so it's one of those things where if he can't knock him out, he's going to be in trouble. And Olivier, he has that experience. He comes from a great camp in TriStar. And the other thing I was saying to someone else yesterday, like if there's one solid way for your opponent to win, and that being knockout. If you're TriStar and you're Firas Zahabi and you're a mastermind when it comes to that, you're probably making a game plan that might not be the most appealing to the fans, but it's going to get you the win. And this kind of reminds me a little bit of the Rory McDonald and Tyron Woodley fight way back when in Vancouver, where Woodley has knockout power, he's able to get in there, but Rory was able to sort of use his wrestling and grappling and stuff like that to sort of it wasn't a boring fight, but it wasn't a fight where you expected like the crowd were on their feet type thing. Rory got the job done. I think we could see something here with Olivier where he has a really good game plan. He's able to neutralize Hernandez as a stand-up, and he gets a decision here. I'm going to Olivier by decision in this one.
Now, I'm going to disagree with you on a couple points here. You said earlier that this fight is good. I will say it's not. I will say Alex Hernandez, I think this guy has some potential. We haven't seen much from him in the cage. He knocked out Benil Dariush in 50 seconds or it was real fast. And so we saw that he has knockout power. We saw that this guy starts fast. We saw that he's very aggressive when he wants to be or right off the bat, whatever the case is. Well, but we don't really know much about him, if we're being honest. Mm-hmm. We'll learn a lot more in this fight, I suspect, because I don't think it'll end in a minute. I think this will probably go the distance, if not well into the midway part of the fight, second round, third round even. But I will say it's not a good fight because I think Olivier Aubin-Mercier, this guy has a lot of potential too. Now Hernandez,
but he's had chances, Nick. That's the thing. Like he, you mentioned the 2 losses. It's not like he's gone undefeated. I think they wanted. Remember when he first won, I was off the Ultimate Fighter. They kept making the comparisons to Georges St. Pierre. He hasn't been that. So if you can't beat a guy like Alex Hernandez, who just won lightning in a bottle, you shouldn't be in that talk of this big thing. And with Hernandez, was it a fluke that you beat Benil Dariush? If you can beat a guy in Olivier who looks like he's sort of turned the corner in his last couple wins, I think you deserve to be in that conversation. So to me, it's weeding out who is good and who isn't. And in a division so deep as lightweight, it's not like there aren't other prospects on the come up. There's lots of guys that I'm sure are vying for a title shot. I mean, the division's so crowded, you need that separation, and you can't keep babying these guys on the way on. They need to fight each other. And to me, even if Hernandez loses, we'll still know where he fits in the division.
Now, the thing is, I mean, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, yes, he has had chances. He lost to Carlos Diafea. He lost in his debut to Chad Laprise, who went on to win Ultimate Fighter in that fight. But I saw something different. Now, this probably sounds bizarre, but I saw something different from OAM in his last fight than any other fight. I personally have not been a believer in Olivier Aubin-Mercier. I've picked against him well more than I've picked him, and that's not actually going to change. Spoiler alert, I'm picking Alex Hernandez here, but I know I saw something different in OAM last one when he fought Evan Dunham, knocked him out in 50 seconds. Maybe it was because he just, landed a great shot and put the durable Dunham away really early on, and that isn't something I was expecting, and even he wasn't really expecting. But I saw something there that this guy can be legit. Early on, when the comparisons to GSP were happening and when everyone was saying this guy's the next big thing, I wasn't buying it. But as of a few months ago, I really do buy, him as a fighter. I think he's talented. I think he's getting better. TriStar, that's helping him, of course, but also the Canadian gangster gimmick. That's something we didn't have, a few years ago when he debuted. I think that helps him, as a brand, as a fighter. I think people like to see him. Now, I know my content here at UFC Calgary really has to say on who's big, but Olivier Aubin-Mercier at Media Day is one of my either top 2 or 3 most viewed videos so far this week out of well over 20. And so, does that mean anything? Maybe. I mean, people, I think, like Aubin-Mercier. Now, on the other hand, Hernandez, again, we haven't seen anything from him much, but he has and you've talked to him, he has a great personality, and I think this guy has star potential. Now, he has to, put himself in the cage, of course, but I think he could be a top guy. Now, I think these guys are the 2 up-and-comers at lightweight. I don't think these are the 2 top prospects, and so to put them up against each other, I don't think makes too much sense. But nonetheless, I am going Hernandez now. I've been praising OAM for the last 5 minutes, but I'm still picking against him. I don't know why, but just something about this fight tells me Hernandez will be able to. I think he's a better striker, and I think that's what this comes down to. OAM is more proven. He's had way more UFC experience, so that has to count for something. But I think Hernandez is able to keep this one on the feet, and I don't think he knocks out OAM, but I'm hoping his cardio will hold up, and I think this one will go 3 rounds, but I think Hernandez's hand will be raised. Now, over 3 rounds, almost has to favor OAM, so maybe by the time the fight starts, I'll change my pick. But OAM definitely has the advantage on the ground, but he also predicted a knockout. So is he going to go in there and look to bang with Hernandez? I don't think that would be a great move. So I'm sure it's all talk. I'm sure he'll look to take this to the ground if he gets hit a few times, but I'm going to go Hernandez, keeping this one on the feet and scoring a decision win. All right, let's move to the prelim card. We're not going to go through every fight, not even close, but I'll just ask you a general question. What stands out to you on this prelim card? There's a lot of good matchups, but what stands out to you?
To me, the one I'm most intrigued by, and it's probably going to be not everyone's pick, but this Austin Arnett-Hakeem Dawodu fight, 2 guys who came off really disappointing UFC debuts, especially Hakeem, who had a lot of hype heading into his debut. He was on a roll, he was undefeated, and then he suffers that really that could have been a worse UFC debut. I can't think of a UFC debut that was worse than that. It was pretty awful, and Hakeem is now, fighting in his hometown of Calgary, He's got a lot of hype behind him. You mentioned off the top, not a lot of Canadians in the UFC right now. He's sort of one of the only hopes. Jeremy Kennedy not re-signing with the UFC's with Brave now. They don't have a lot of prospects, and to me, Hakeem is your guy, and you hope that he gets a big win here. But Austin Arnett comes from that Sick-Jitsu camp with Michael Chiesa and those guys. There is a potential here for an upset as well too. Just with the fact that he has a lot more experience than Hakeem does in terms of actual fights. So I'm intrigued. Does Hakeem, live up to the hype here? It's really going to dictate. I mean, if Hakeem loses here, I would not be surprised if he gets cut here, because this is a fight he should win on paper. But what happens? Stranger things have happened.
I'm not sure about him getting cut. I think most fighters get 3 chances.
If he gets the biggest day, you cannot have a better opportunity than Hakeem does right now, taking on an opponent that really does need an Ansaroff fight, because just by the stats here, Randa's never lost in Canada. Randa's also never won 2 in a row in the UFC. She's alternated between wins and losses her entire UFC career. Can she pull it off? Nina Ansaroff was someone that people were writing off, and then all of a sudden she beats Angela Hill, and we're like, oh wait, she's actually not that bad. So who wins this fight? I have no idea. My pick actually is with Ansaroff here, but if Marcos pulls it out, especially with the judges in Canada, you never know. That would be a pretty good moment for her, getting 2 in a row.
Now, my prelim to watch is one nobody is talking about, partly because neither guy speaks good English or English at all, so that doesn't help. And they're in the middle of the prelims. I think they're actually opening up the FS1 card, but no one's really talking about it. I actually think on paper it's a pretty fun matchup, and whether it's fun just because they're big and they could gas out, we'll see. But Gatsamurad Antigulov versus Ian Kudalov is actually a pretty fun fight. Antigulov is quite the grappler. He hasn't fought in a very long time. I think he was dealing with some USADA issues. Do you remember if that was the case?
I don't remember.
Issues. Do you remember if that was the case?
I don't remember, to be honest.
You don't remember, but yeah. He hasn't fought a long time. He choked out. He had a pretty cool submission against who's that big Brazilian? Marcos Rogério de Lima. I think it was a guillotine or something like that off his back, and it was really quite the submission and an impressive debut. We have yet to see him since that fight, sometime in 2017. On the other hand, Kudalaba hasn't fought for a little while. He is, in fact, or he was, in fact, dealing with some USADA issues that got cleared up. He's ready to go. I think it might have been Tatum supplements or whatever the case is. Seems like that's what happens more often than not. But Kudalaba, this guy's really good on the feet. He's dangerous. His nickname is the Hulk. Now, I was very disappointed when he came out at the ceremonial weigh-ins yesterday without the green paint all over him. He didn't look as much like
I think he got fined for that last time.
Oh, did he? Yeah. Is that true?
I believe there was some issue with that. Yeah. So
that's insane. Whoever fined him is stupid. that was the greatest gimmick ever. But nonetheless, I think this is a fun one. I'm gonna go Antigulov. I think. Just Kudalaba hasn't had the greatest ground defense. People have taken him down, and if you pressure him, that's sort of where he falls a little bit. So I think that's sort of how this one will play out. But Kudalaba is so dangerous and so powerful. You remember the fight with that Luis Henrique da Silva?
Mm-hmm.
He starched him in like 50 seconds or a minute, and so if that Kudalaba comes out, maybe he does the same thing to Antigulov. I don't know, and I think at 205, no, I don't think Kudalaba makes a run. He's lost a couple times already, but Antigulov has a bit of potential to move up. Antigulov is already in the top 15, and so they're just going to move up from there. And 205, it's a nothing division. We need somebody. Now, I know we have Dominic Reyes. I think he has a lot of potential. Anthony Smith is on his way up, but I think the winner of this could definitely make a few waves at the very least. I don't know. Am I onto something, or is this just another?
Possibly. I really don't care that much about this fight. I'll be honest. They're both very talented. I'm not taking anything away from that. But they don't neither speak English. It's not like you're and neither of them sort of give off that like Drago presence from Rocky or anything like that. So to me, it's like this is sort of the one fight on the card. Well, I'm sure we could see a finish or a good fight here. Just don't care that much.
Fair enough. Anything else we want to touch on? UFC Calgary is a great fight,
Alexis Davis being an underdog to Caitlin Chookagian is kind of interesting to me, just with the fact that Davis has fought some really tough fighters in her career. She has that win over Sarah Kaufman, who's now the Invicta champ. How does she do in this fight? She seems like 125 is her ideal weight class. Let's see what happens there. Alex Moreno, Jordan Mean, potential fight of the night. He was losing, and then he gets the knockout at the end here. I think Cajun inside the distance is something crazy, like plus 1,300 or something like that. So who knows? He's in Canada. He did that kind of joke with Dana White where he didn't shake his hand. There's some animosity towards the UFC with him being part of that union and Project Spearhead and everything like that. So yeah, I'm interested by that fight. What if Cajun wins? Makhachev has a great prospect, and he's only lost once.
All right, episode 172 of the MMA Circus is in the books. Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate it. UFC Calgary, of course, going down in just a few seconds on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast, Google Play, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Player FM, Overcast, Podcast Addict, and pretty much anywhere else you can find a podcast and listen to one. Go rate us, review, subscribe. If you please like this YouTube channel or like this YouTube video, I should say, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any feedback, drop a comment in the comment section down below, and that would be great. James, plug away. You have, so many.
The easiest way, Lynch on Sports. I'll be plugging my stuff all night for Fightful and for Flow Combat. I'm here for both outlets, so check that out, and check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. Thanks everyone for watching, and thanks for having me, Nick. It was good to be on and talking some fights.
Absolutely. As far as me, you can find me on Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. As I said, youtube.com/SevereArt is where you will be able to find all my stuff later tonight, and all my interviews, pre-fight interviews, Dustin Ortiz, Alexis Davis, Devin Powell, Cajun Johnson, all the media day stuff and more. Justin Arnett, the TKO Bantamweight champion, we both spoke with him yesterday. That'll be up probably tomorrow, maybe Monday, depending on I guess what happens tonight as well. But that's really it. Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate